It's absolutely my pleasure to be here. It's very early this morning, 8 a.m. I know it's lunchtime where you are, so I hope you're tucked into your lunch. I've just had my breakfast. I'm just, here in Charlottetown at home, actually. It's because it's so early, I thought I would work from home, and thus the Mac, the Apple computer. Otherwise, at work, I would be using my PC, and things probably would have gone more smoothly. But anyway, Andrew, if you want to start that would be great. We could get going. So as Andrew said, I am the interim coordinator of the Master of Arts in Island Studies program and interim chair of the executive of the Institute of Island Studies. And you can change it to the next, please. So I've been doing this for I've been working at the Institute of Island Studies since 1990 and have managed to work my way up from publishing coordinator 3 days a week through to being a student of the Master of Arts in Island Studies program to going away and doing my PhD at University of Tasmania, coming back and working as coordinator of the Institute and the UNESCO chair, and now with the retirement of Jim Randall, filling in for him as the all of those things, the director, coordinator of the Maze program and coordinator of the Institute. So I'm hoping that down the road, my dream might come true and I will actually can take interim off, but we'll just keep our fingers crossed there. So today I just thought I'd give you a quick outline of what the Institute's all about, what we do here with our vision and 4-point mandate, some of our activities and some challenges and opportunities for island studies. So it's really interesting thinking about how institutes form. And I'm hoping that if you wanted to form your own, and we've been asked for our advice on these kinds of things, that there might be some takeaways here for you. Otherwise, I might go off on a tangent a little bit and talk about my passion, which is, islandness and island identity and just all the island studies family that we've made around the world, including Andrew and Frank and a few of the audience members I see out there. So next slide, please. We began in 1985 with former director Harry Baglow's vision. He had been he grew up in Prince Edward Island, a rural Prince Edward Islander, and went off to Memorial University in the 1960s and discovered this renaissance of ideas about Newfoundland being reclaiming their history and heritage and their story, so that they became, their culture would become more vibrant instead of always being the basket case of the country. So he was there just when that was going on, and he thought, wait a minute, can we do that in Prince Edward Island? So he came back and started activities to help Prince Edward Island reclaim some of its story, and including starting a publishing company, being the initial director of the PEI Museum and Heritage Foundation, creating the Island magazine. And in 1985, he created the Institute of Island Studies, which was to be this research institute. It was always based at University of Prince Edward Island, and it was Dr. Peter Meinke, who was the president at the time. Some of you may know his name from ACISA conferences because he's remained quite involved, especially around ideas of sustainability and the environment. So you could tell that we had a kindred spirit, I suppose, in the president's seat, which is often so important when you want to start a research institute. And so he was there from the beginning. It was always Harry's idea to contribute to policy development on Prince Edward Island. So when I joined in 1990, we were starting to really cook, right? There were some really cool ideas happening. We hosted our first conference in 1992, bringing together islanders from around the world. I think it was 24 islands represented, 52 islanders. As when we picked them up at the airport, they talked and talked and talked and talked until we dropped them off when, finally they stopped talking, because it was just incredible, the energy that came out of that first meeting. And people that were at that first meeting are still involved, many of them in island studies today. So you can see that it's been going for quite a while. I can't claim credit. UPEI is not the first. I think Malta had a meeting before us, and there had been a couple of there was a conference in ACISA. Before ACISA became ACISA, there were a couple of conferences as well in the late 80s, one in Victoria, BC, one in Hobart. But, you know, we really were at the very early stages of island studies. So the North Atlantic Islands program that you see there on the screen was brought together islands from around the North Atlantic, obviously, and it was to look at share policy ideas, things that we might be able to share to bring home to Prince Edward Island or to share with other islands. So we had Iceland and the Isle of Man, the Faroes, Greenland, Åland Islands, Cape Breton Island, Newfoundland, and PEI. I think that's the 7. And that's where my first introduction to Iceland came from, was being able to go there and meet some fantastic Icelanders like Dr. Sigfus Jonsson, a fisheries guy, Gisli Sigurdsson, who was a saga expert, Gudrun Pettersdottir, who was the director of Fisheries Institute at University of Iceland. All of those people who became very much a part of our island studies family. It culminated in 1998 with the North Atlantic Forum. And so some of you may know that name because it's still going. The last one was in 2019, coordinated with the Canadian Rural Revitalization Foundation, which I'll talk about later. We had this great conference, the NAF, we call it the Surf NAF. Whenever the surf conference happens on the East Coast, we try to coordinate it with the NAF, the North Atlantic Forum, and had Dr. Brendan O'Keefe and some of his colleagues from Connemara or from Ireland come over. And so the next NAF is going to be, it was supposed to be this past fall in Connemara, but I believe it's going to be in 2022. So watch for that as well. Next, we have very early on, we created a public policy partnership with the province. It was a 3-year agreement where we would actually work on projects with the government to try and create island focused policy, because you know, policy created on the mainland most often does not apply or needs to be tweaked a lot to work on an island. So that was the idea behind that we would work with them to try and bring lessons from other islands that would apply. One of them was a population strategy, which has actually, it was done in 2000, province-wide consultation process that we facilitated at the Institute. And we were able to come up with some policy recommendations about growing our policy and what our population and how to do it through immigration and retention and trying to draw people back that had moved away. And so that morphed into recruiting talent to PEI in 2018, which again was looking at how we might bring back some of our best and brightest who had moved away for greener pastures, and seeing what were some of the barriers to them coming back, including my daughter, you know, who lives in Fort McMurray in the oil field, and what she is the perfect example of somebody that we would like to bring back here to PEI. We ended up, we've done, dozens and dozens of research projects, and we have a fantastic website called islandstudies.com, which we captured early on, and we were able to do these research projects slowly but surely, building up our stable of researchers and our capacity to do stuff with the government when they needed something. So we were approached a couple of years ago by the Community Foundation of Prince Edward Island to do what's called Vital Signs, which was a great project measuring people's sense of well-being on the island, and produced a 20-page document called Vital Signs 2019, which then has led to the latest project that we're working with government on, the PEI Indicators of Wellbeing, which is a survey which is going now. We have 3 more days that it's open, and hoping, or 2 more days, it closes tomorrow, and we'll be producing a report and doing it longitudinally. So you can see there the dates 21 to 25. So Andrew, you can turn it on to the next one. You can see then that, you know, we focus a lot on, you know, culture, the environment, sustainability, land use, population, whatever helps grow, you know, helps to ensure Prince Edward Island's future prosperity. But we also look outward. So the next thing that we talked, trying to explain what is island studies at UPEI, and they go, well, you know, you've got a press, and you had the Island Studies Journal there, and you've got the master's program. Well, this is just sort of a little timeline of what we have here and when it came. So the Institute in 1985, the press started in 1987. It's still going, publishing 2 to 3 titles a year. In 2003, we started the Master of Arts in Island Studies program, realizing that it was a niche that needed to be filled. We didn't have people educated in island studies. At the same time, we were able to attract funding for a Canada Research Chair in Island Studies, and Godfrey Baldacchino was the one who came, and many of you will know his name, rock star as we call him in Island Studies. He's so well known. He's came from the University of Malta and was with us for 10 years before going back to Malta, but he still comes every summer and teaches in our program. And the Canada Research Chair ended in 2013. But then we were able to get the UNESCO chair, attract one of those. There's only 27 or 28 now in Canada. So Godfrey and Jim were the co-chairs from 2016 to 2020. And then Jim was the sole chair from 2020 until he retired this year. So it's now we're looking to fill it from within UPEI and working on that. The other thing that happened was the Island Studies Journal, which we had at UPEI, hosted it there with Godfrey as its initial editor, and it's now passed over to Adam Gridehoy, who is the executive editor, and it's been moved to the University of the Faroe Islands, which is its new institutional home. So we were sorry to see it go, but I know that it's going to flourish over at the Faroes, and we'll see what happens after 4 years. Hopefully it can stay there as well. Next slide, please. When trying to explain all of the different things that we do at the Institute to some new staff last year, when we were creating a communication strategy, we decided to put together an org chart, and that's what it looked like. And it's quite incredible, all of the different arms to it and the reporting structure and stuff like that. So next slide, please. Maggie Henry, one of our students that we hired last year, was able to put it, to distill it into this lovely first opening front page of our website. So there you can see the different arms that we have: the Institute, the UNESCO Chair, the Maze Program, and ISP. And right there in the middle is the survey that's open for the next 2 days, Indicators of Wellbeing on Prince Edward Island. Next. Here's our vision, to be the leading center of excellence on issues related to island studies, scholarship, public policy, and engagement. And so it's stood us the test of time, this mandate and vision. It was created way back. Harry had the vision to do it, and it stood. We revisit it every few years, and we maybe make a couple of tweaks here and there, but mostly it stood the test of time. So it's the first one to encourage a deep knowledge, understanding, and expression of Prince Edward Island, to serve as a bridge between the university and island communities, to contribute to the formulation of public policy in Prince Edward Island, and to undertake and facilitate island studies research and education at the local, national, and global scales. So that fourth one is one that we have taken on with a vengeance over the years, becoming quite involved in international island studies, and always with a view of looking at what we learn from them, bringing back to Prince Edward Island. That the logo that you see there with the boat was a piece of stained glass that we had, that Harry had commissioned by a local artist named John Burden. And so he did that one and the North Atlantic Forum. And so they hang in our offices. They're pretty special treats to have. Next slide, please. Here's some of our press. We've published over 40 titles since 1985. There's a smattering of some of the old ones and new ones. You'll see a book of poetry there, that my book of poems. I'm going to shamelessly promote it. And seeing Ralph Westman online here with us today, I'm going to promote also the Tasmanian edition, which is with the cover by Michelle Bolter, who is has Prince Edward Island roots and a wonderful friend that I met in Tasmania. So I'm so absolutely thrilled to be a published author of Island Studies Press, and hoping that Andrew R. Bridges' book will join this august little collection of covers when the time comes. We have been, as I've said here, the 3 titles have received Publication of the Year from the PEI Museum and Heritage Foundation, which, if you recall, Harry Bagwell was one of the founders of. So everything is all connected here. Being a small island of 160,000 people, you probably wouldn't be surprised at that, how everything is so well connected, but it's pretty exciting. We also received some regional accolades as well with the Atlantic Book Award nominations. Okay, next, please. We have part of what we've done here to carry out our 4-point mandate, especially like building bridges and putting, facilitating research about islands, is hosting conferences and lectures and public symposia. So here are just a few examples of the conferences that we've hosted. The Building Community Resilience Conference in 2015, which is, I think, when Andrew first came to Prince Edward Island, to this conference in Summerside. We actually then produced the book, From Black Horses to White Steeds, out of it. And it was a collaboration between the Canadian Rural Revitalization Foundation and the North Atlantic Forum. In 2016, we worked with the climate change the Center for Climate Change at UPEI, and did this conference on global climate change in islands, and brought together speakers from around the world with funding from our local ACOA, the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, and the province, and a couple of small foundations that were quite interested in this. So it was a really wonderful bringing together of experts on the idea of climate change, and how Prince Edward Island might take some lessons from that. And it was really fascinating over the 4 days of that symposium. The most recent conference that we've hosted in 2019 was on Aruba. We got to take our conference organizing skills and worked with some wonderful colleagues at the University of Aruba, and came up with sharing stories of island life, governance, and global engagement. And this was part of a research project that we've been working on that's funded by the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, looking at the differences between small island states and subnational island jurisdictions. Next, please. We also have hosted public symposia before the pandemic. These were held in person, and those are some of the speakers there. You may recognize Gudrun Thora Gunnarsdottir from Iceland. She came to talk about tourism and to bring us lessons from around from there that we might apply. So you can see some of the topics here: population and migration, land use policy, water, local government, sustainable agriculture, and making the case for PEI to be Canada's first carbon neutral province, which is pretty ambitious, and I think we're still on track to do that. But we often, if we have a guest speaker coming in, we will ask government, friends and colleagues in government, if they would like to have that speaker come and talk to their staff. And that's been a really good partnership to pick up on people's expertise and see what sorts of lessons that might be drawn from other places. So it's been a useful collaboration. Next, please. The whole idea about having a public symposia is to be what we call an honest broker, in that bringing all sides of a topic to the table so that we can have conversations and dialogue, and we don't want to be associated with one side or another. So those kinds of topics are always fraught, right? Contested space or contested ways of doing things. And so trying to have open dialogue and get communication going is so important. And so that's what we strive to do. Another series is our Island Lecture Series, and pre-pandemic we did these in person as well. We've done a couple over the past year and a half online and hope to continue to do so. Here we had one on Cyclone Pam by one of our anthropology professors, Jean Mitchell, who is quite knowledgeable about Vanuatu. Environmental tourism with Dr. Ed McDonald, climate change and cultural change through art with Brenda Whiteway, and even policy to action lessons from SAMHSA by Jocelyn Plourde, who is one of our Mays graduates. The big group that you see there are on the Faroe Islands. A bunch of students went over and did a project in the Faroes that brought together islands from around the world. So they came and spoke to us about their experience. So we're having, maybe next slide, I think maybe that's where it shows what we're doing. Yes, so under the research part here, I have intern from the Netherlands. So this was Ilse van Dijk, who this summer did an internship with me looking at art and public policy and art climate change adaptation and how public policy might adapt some of those lessons that she learned. And so that, I think, will be our next lecture series, and we'll put that online. And so we'll be doing some promotion around that. So you can see that things, feed in. We try to generate material and then have bring it out to you through different ways of knowledge mobilization. The Sustainable Island Futures Research Project was the one that I alluded to earlier about the small island states and subnational island jurisdictions. So that brought together 12 islands from around the world, and we paired them, small island states with a subnational island jurisdiction, and looking at how people relate to their governance. So we are doing focus groups and surveys and stuff like that, and we'll be wrapping that up probably in the next year, and with some papers in Small Island, what's it called? Godfrey Baldacchino's journal, Small States and Territories Journal. We'll have a couple of articles from that, and perhaps a conference as well. We've had international scholars come here to visit and to teach in our program. Not lately, of course, but hoping that after COVID is finished, we might be able to get back to doing that. With Island Innovation, who you heard from last week or 2 weeks ago with James Ellsmore, and with SCELG, which is the Strathclyde Centre for Environmental Law and Governance, we put together this COVID-19 Island Insight series, which brought, and I believe Andrew is one of the authors from Shetland, and what were the different islands' experiences with COVID, and are there some takeaways that we might be able to, again, share? It's just getting the information out there, and so that people have things there that are that what's going on around the world. This piece of art on the right-hand side, these are by an artist from Prince Edward Island named Catherine Miller, and she did this showing what Prince Edward Island would look like when the sea level rose, so that you can see would be broken up into 3 or 4 different islands over the course of probably 100 years if we keep going. So it just shows how climate change really impacts on islands and an artistic approach to doing it. It was very powerful for me when I first saw that, living here on this little island, to know that we could become Prince Edward Islands. Next slide, please. The Master of Arts and Island Studies program. So when I was working at the Institute as the publishing coordinator and getting to administer a whole bunch of different projects like the North Atlantic Islands program and the North Atlantic Forum, and just working on stuff like the population strategy, I never dreamed that I could go back to school and do something that I was passionate about. But in 2003, we created the master's program. It was a thesis program. I was in the first cohort and graduated in 2007. So here are some of the grads on the screen, and some of the projects that they worked on. For instance, the transition to zero net carbon emissions in SAMHSA. Remoteness and identity on St. Helena. That would be Owen Jennings, a picture of him on St. Helena there. We're doing work right now, Summerside case study of smart grids. and community reactions to wind turbines in Eastern PEI, because they're quite contested. And I know that Izumi is online, so I wanted to give a shout out to the work that she did looking at niche and off-island strategies for island business. Some of our students have gone on to work on their PhDs, including Izumi at University of Malta. And I am one of them as well. As I mentioned before, I went off to Tasmania to do my PhD. We have other students who are working in government and NGOs from around the world. So they're doing amazing work and clamoring for a PhD program at UPEI. So we'll see. It would be really fantastic if we were able to do that at some point. A few years ago, Jim had the inspired idea to create the course and work study program, which has pretty much doubled our enrollment in the last 4 years. He created 3 streams, being island tourism, sustainable island communities, and international relations and island public policy. So these 3 streams have attracted students from around the world. Very pleased with the caliber of work that they do. They take 7 courses, academic courses, and then do 3 practical courses, including work placements, a 6-week placement with an organization. And because of the pandemic, it would have been more difficult, I think, for some of our students to be able to travel to the Caribbean or to Scotland or where else did they go? Iceland, for instance. But they were able to do their work remotely and work with their supervisors remotely, and it was a wonderful experience over the last couple of summers that our students have been doing these programs. So I'm really looking forward to expanding our reach. If anybody's interested in hosting one of our students for a small, discrete, like 5 to 6 week research project, we'd love to hear from you. And it's a great way of a wonderful experience for our students as well as they go out looking for work. Next slide, please. So what we're doing elsewhere, as I mentioned before, scholars come here to study. We haven't gone out so much, but it would be great. I was supposed to go to Malta and do an Erasmus Plus thing last March, April, I guess, and that all got shut down. So I don't know if that opportunity will still arise. It'd be fantastic if it did. We had the UNESCO chair happening. That was, if you recognize Jim and Godfrey there, they were doing some fantastic work. It's continuing to go, even though Jim is now retired. We're continuing the legacy of that. And next slide, please. These are some of our international collaborations. There are a couple of organizations that I mentioned, like the Canadian Rural Revitalization Foundation, which is Canadian. And so making that connection between islands and rural has been my goal through that, my stint with them on the board. I'm just now retired from the board, but hopefully I will stay involved. The RETI, which is the Réseau d'Excellence Territoire Insulaire of universities that are based on islands, and I believe that UHI's rector might be the chair or the president of RETI right now. Also is CISA, which is one of the longest running international small island studies association, longest running international islands association. So they have a conference, RETI as well. We'll have, I'm not sure when RETI's next conference is, but CISA's is in Zadar in Croatia next June. And the call for papers, the deadline's coming up October 31st. So acisa.org if you're interested in presenting. The Small Island Culture Research Initiative, or SECRE, is another one. And that one, I know, is happening in Shetland next June. Congratulations, or my commiserations, Andrew. I know what it's like to organize a conference, but it's so much fun, really. And I really hope to get there because I didn't get to go there for the Her Stories conference. And so it's my goal to bookend Zadar on one side, visit my daughter in England in the middle, and then go to Shetland at the end of June. So that's my plan, as long as COVID doesn't interrupt it too much. We've also, I mentioned the North Atlantic Forum collaboration, but we also have collaborations, as Andrew mentioned, with University of Highlands and Islands. With CODAL in Scotland, we worked with them on the in the economic impacts of COVID-19, we got funding from the Northern Periphery and Arctic program. And so some money came to us to help flesh out the Atlantic Canada side. And we contributed to that report last year, or earlier this year, rather. We've worked with, I mentioned, the Strathclyde Centre for Environmental Law and Governance at Strathclyde, and we have an event coming up at the COP 26. It'll be an in-person online event. Unfortunately, I will have to attend online because we're not allowed to travel from UPEI, but looking forward to that, looking at how the pandemic and islands have responded, and how does that factor into our world at this point in relation to climate change. You can see the, and that's also in conjunction with island innovation that James talked about a couple of weeks ago. Excuse me. We've also had ongoing relations with Hainan Island in China, which is one of our sister islands, actually, and helping to organize a couple of conferences and then publishing these books. The annual report on global islands, we've done 4. That's the most recent one there with the mask. To me, it looks like a diaper, but anyway, they didn't consult me when they made the cover, but it's chock-a-block full of up-to-date stuff about islands and international things like blockchain and ports and tourism and things that are really top of mind when it comes to island issues at the moment, and a lot of great statistics as well, edited by Jim Randall. Next, please. I think I'm coming to the end. Yes, our challenges. Being interdisciplinary can be a blessing and a curse. Of course, I like to think of it as a blessing, but sometimes people just don't know where to put us. They don't know how to peg us, because we do capture, we try to bring in as many people and disciplines as we can, be it literature or history or anthropology, social science, climate change, governance, business, economics, all of those things come under the umbrella of our discipline. And we have students coming from all of those disciplines as well. And we have, host lectures and public symposia about all of those. But at the same time, the idea is always to put islands at the center. And it's been quite a revelation for many people, especially when our students come in and they say, my friends all ask me, what about these island studies? Are you studying PEI? And we go, no, I'm studying Prince Edward, or I'm studying, islands from around the world. And it becomes, I think it's really coming into its own, especially as islands become, you don't want to always think of them as laboratories for the world, or microcosms, because we are people in our own right, and we don't want to be looked at as lab rats. At the same time, there are so many lessons we can learn from islands that we can take out to the rest of the world. And so it's always this little push-pull thing going on, but where there's tension, there's usually excitement as well. Our funding here at UPEI is pretty tenuous. We were told in 2014, this one step back, 2 steps forward. It was a bit of a crisis point for the Institute in 2013, 2014, but we restructured, brought the Institute more closely together with the Maze program, and that's why I'm doing both jobs, and it's a way to, make sure that there's synergies between the two things going on. And but they've asked us to be self-sustaining, which is really a challenge, and we're always, trying to justify our existence to our university administrators and showing that we're the best that we can be. And sometimes we're recognized for it more internationally than we are locally, which gets kind of frustrating after a while. But the opportunities are incredible, especially this new students that we're bringing in. Next slide, please. And contributing to public policy development on PEI as that honest broker that I mentioned. things that we would like to do over the next few years is to create a Canadian islands network. We've been great on the international side, but there's a lot of Canadian islands, freshwater islands. There's not been a lot of research done out there on freshwater islands, so we would like to contribute to that. We're now part of the University of the Arctic, so conversation is happening with Andrew, or it will be. We've initiated it briefly in the summer to create an islands theme network, and happy to be part of that. We want to keep the UNESCO chair opening doors. It's been a fantastic door opener so far, and we want to continue. Pursue some Canadian Tri-Council research funds. It seems to be the way to go to keep us going and keep those partnerships going with the provincial and even maybe the federal government, especially around the areas of area of climate change on small islands. And as I mentioned before, wouldn't it be fantastic if you could get a PhD in island studies, and why not Prince Edward Islands? So that's one of the things I would like to get going. And I think that might be my last slide. Let's see if there's anything else. Just me, there's space, an island in space. I love that image. So I'm open to any questions and comments, and I'm happy to I went way over time. Oh, well, you still have 20 minutes. So.
Thank you very much, Laurie. No, you're not way over time at all. It's all absolutely fascinating, riveting stuff. What an amazing amount of work the Institute has managed to do since its inception.
And I must say, Andrew, you are part of our advisory committee, which is fantastic. We get to see Andrew in that light as well. We have a number of international people on our advisory committee, including Andrew, Gudrun Thora Gunnarsdottir, and others from around the world. So bringing you in is really, really important.
Absolutely, all the networking that's being undertaken is absolutely vital. Well, I've got lots of questions, but I really shouldn't ask them. I should let other people go first. And well, there's a couple of questions in the chat, but perhaps since I can see Frank there, maybe Frank would like to say something.
You've gone mute, Andrew. I didn't hear the last bit of the sentence there, but.
Oh, I went mute. That's strange. It's still green on my screen. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great, and it was great to see some very familiar names from the past 30-something years, or been involved in this sort of stuff. So it's good to get an update on these things. I'm just wondering about your. In particular, your island studies seminars or webinars. Are there plans to open that out, or to continue that online and whatnot? I think one of the things that COVID has shown us is that it's really easy to get people to network all over the place, all over the world with this thing. So I think we intend to continue that. I just wonder what your plans are in that area.
Yeah, we have a couple of ideas in the hopper, and I think that one of them will be showcasing some of the work that our students have done in regards to these projects that they've undertaken. For instance, one of the students was tasked with taking the sewage water that had been treated in Cavendish, because generally, as if anybody's familiar at all with Prince Edward Island, Cavendish is the tourist resort municipality of Cavendish and the North Shore. And so that's where most of our tourists come. And so the idea was to take this water and irrigate golf courses with it. So people go, ooh, but it was quite an interesting project. And so he did this little piece of it. And I thought that, and there other work that other students did. For instance, one of our students, Chelsea Morrison, did some work with the folks at Codal. And so to get these, to talk about youth and how they fit into governance structures on the islands in Scotland. So there are some examples that I think are worthy of bringing to the rest of the world. So that was one idea for a lecture. And we are just now going to be starting conversations about working with a group on water on Prince Edward Island. We had done a public symposium years ago about that, but now trying to make water making it, looking at it as a common resource, and how to work together, because we have people on one side wanting to irrigate potatoes, people on the other side saying we don't have enough water. How are we going to bring it all together so that everybody benefits? So those are a couple of things that are coming up, as well as Ilse van Dijk talking about climate change and art. So, but we're open to ideas, and we're just finding that through the pandemic, making the switch to online, just like everybody else, was a bit of a challenge, but we, I think, have done a fairly good job, just like you guys have. It's fantastic having this series, and there will be stuff coming forward. Yes.
Thanks very much, Laurie. There's a general question here from Jo. She's wondering how the pandemic has affected PEI and, in particular, the Institute.
Well, Prince Edward Island has been, my hat goes off to our Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Heather Morrison, who has worked tirelessly over the past 20 months with our Premier. I mean, they've worked together so beautifully to make Prince Edward Island a safe place. We've had maybe just slightly over 300 cases, one hospitalization, no deaths. We still have some of the most stringent policies to get on to Prince Edward Island. For instance, when I flew back, I had to go visit my mom out in Victoria last week in British Columbia on the other side. So, 6-8 hour flight coming in, at 1:30 in the morning, I had to be swabbed, right? And so and if it was just a quick test, but everybody coming onto the island has to be swabbed. Fortunately, in the Atlantic provinces, we were able to put together an Atlantic bubble so that if you were coming from one of the other Atlantic provinces, you didn't have to be tested when you arrived. So it's been, people are getting a little grumpy, but we all have to play our part. And Prince Edward Islanders are very compliant, and I'm so grateful for that, because it's made it a safe place. We still, have to wear masks and show our vax pass when we go into a restaurant, but it's been quite amazing. Plus, we've benefited from a lot of people from away wanting to move here, because it's been seen as a very safe place. So housing prices have gone through the roof, which is not a good thing, but we've also benefited from having a lot of people move to the island, bringing their expertise as well. So it's been, as I've said so many times, our pandemic has been unlike any other people's pandemics. We've been so fortunate with the Institute, again, making that switch to online teaching, online lectures. It's been a challenge, but I think we've risen to it and met it. I would like to do more, for sure.
And in fact, you can read the report that you mentioned, that we've all been working on the different islands, so
Yes.
Jo can have a look at that. Now, there's one of the reasons for this series is to explore avenues of research, to highlight what people are doing in different islands, and maybe to look for new fields. And the Institute seems to be involved in a whole range of different types of research, and your students are doing some really interesting things, like the water on the golf course that you were suggesting. It's a tricky question, this, really, I suppose. The main features of research at the moment, the main sort of fields seem to be, sustainability, climate change, depopulation. And I just wondered, are there any fields of research that you think island scholars should be looking at that are sort of under-featured at the moment? Anything sort of that you would like the Institute to take up in future?
I think that it's already being done to a certain degree, but I would really love to see more research done on indigeneity and getting more voices, bringing more voices to the table. Island studies, since I've been involved, has been very Western centric. And I think that there are so many other islands out there that aren't English speaking, that aren't colonies, that have indigenous populations that have been doing their island thing for centuries, and there's so much that we could learn from them. I think that we need to be more open, and I know we're already very open and inclusive, but just to invite more people to the table from other cultures that can bring their points of view as well. I've always been interested in remoteness and isolation and how that feeds into psychological islandness, and whether there's more studies that we could do on that. What is the attraction of being isolated and islanded that drives people to want to go to an island? That seems to be one of the things that I would love to see. I know that Marina Caritas from University of Hawaii has done a lot of work on feminisms and islands, again, bringing the woman's female point of view and all of those other communities, LGBTQ, etc. What are some of their experiences? I guess thinking about connectedness as well, and this comes up in the book that we're putting together about bridges, and how the work that James Ellsmore is doing and that Fleur has investigated, Fleur Ward in her PhD work, what is connectedness doing to the sense of islandness? Are we still as islanded as we were? So there's, yeah, those are just some of the things that I'd love to see. And of course, continue the work looking at subnational island jurisdictions and small island states and teasing out some of the similarities and differences. And is there something that, as Gerard Princeton from Massey University calls it, an Islandian sovereignty that might be at play on many of these subnational island jurisdictions, where we, kind of do our own thing sometimes against the mainland polity. And do we get in trouble? And what do we do when we get in trouble, right? Better to, beg for forgiveness than ask for permission, that kind of thing. So yeah, those are just a few ideas. Plus get a PhD program going in island studies somewhere.
All those sound great. Yeah, and the PhD program, we have PhD students doing island studies subjects. I don't know about them. Don't know if there's scope for some sort of collaboration there. And Frank's got a couple of options as well, sort of things that he would like to see research developing. I'll just read out what he said then. Landscape ecology of islands, promote research into that, and also intercultural studies.
Oh, yes.
We've been doing that here, sort of between the different islands, looking at the different cultures that exist in the Scottish Islands and sharing that information with each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I come from a literature background, and I'm just always blown away by island literature and the topics that they tackle in the novels and poetry and movies and popular culture. It's been quite an eye-opener when I get my students to do an exercise in island pop culture. And for instance, one of our students, her presentation this week was on gated communities and how gated communities are like small islands, and so making that connection. So there's always that metaphoric islands thing happening, that what can we learn from islands as metaphor as well as the lived experience. You never want to overshadow the lived experience, but there are things we can learn from the metaphors that are out there.
Absolutely, and you've got the literary connection. You've got that in common with Frank as well. So.
Ah, okay. We need to meet Frank. We've never met in person. Looking forward to it. I was quite, last time Ray Burnett got in touch after James Ellsmore's presentation, so I don't know if Ray's on the call, but I had met Ray at a couple of conferences over the years, and still remember one evening when we were on Herm Island, and he told the story of Compton Mackenzie and then D.H. Lawrence, the man who loved islands, and I just got goosebumps, and I still get goosebumps when I think of that story, and it's such a universal universal story, but so specific to Herm and Jetu and those islands. And I must also say that getting to travel to so many of these islands has been an intercultural study in itself. They call it academic tourism, and I'm so guilty of that, but have enjoyed every island that I've gone to as part of a conference. And so really looking forward to getting back to that. I haven't minded staying home for the last, 18 months, but also I'm looking forward to getting out there and seeing some of our island study family members on other islands.
And I know you've been doing your research, reading all the Shetland books in preparation for your visit here.
Yes, definitely. And rewatching the series on TV.
Well, you'll be glad to know the series, the next series started yesterday on BBC. So.
Oh my gosh, we have that to look forward to. That's fantastic. And the TV that's coming and movies that are coming out of islands, like on Iceland, like Trapped, and the movies that they're filming there are just incredible. In New Zealand, the movies from there, islands are really coming into their own as far as these places of exoticism. I would never have thought of my island as exotic, but other people do. And so I think of Shetland as exotic and Iceland as exotic, and you might not, but I think that's just part of the allure of islands, isn't it?
Absolutely. It is. And well, the Shetland TV series was very good for tourism before COVID struck.
One of the really interesting things, Laurie, I did a book about a year ago, which has been very successful, looking at this village, not even the island, but the village on the island from the beginning of time, basically, to the near future and climate change and whatnot. And one of the things that's been really inspiring for me is the amount of email I've had from all over the place, which said that has really inspired people to look at their place. To dig where they are, and to think about the links between natural history and social history, and in their own. It's been really, really interesting, and that's so for that alone, it's been really rewarding for me.
Oh, beautiful! No, I'll have to get a copy of that. Wow. We've had one student here in Prince Edward Island is doing a look at a certain section of Charlottetown as an island within an island. So again, it's that neighborhood. I'll make sure that he checks that out, because I think it'll really inform what he's doing as well. So yeah, I guess I think our time is coming, but just if anybody has any questions at all, if you're wanting to start an institute or talk about a master's program, an academic program at all, I'm open, would love to hear from you. Lots to share. I know that Jim did a workshop with some folks on Hainan Island about starting a research institute there that would be focused on islands. And so we do have some expertise that we're happy to share with folks from around the world.
Thank you very much, Laurie. I think that's a good place to round it up. And yes, we will be calling upon your expertise to get this Centre for Island Studies at the UHI finally off the ground. This is part of the process. So what can I say? Fascinating, beautifully delivered, exciting. This is what we want. We want an institute like that you have here in Scotland, and it's been really enjoyable to listen to the successes that you've been involved in, and the discussion was extremely interesting as well. There are a couple of questions sort of just appearing in the chat now, of course, which is a bit too late, but there we are. There's some comments, but I'm sure people can contact you if they have something they want to find out. But also there's some people saying thank you for what has been a great talk. So we'll round it up there, and I'll see you in 4 hours.
That's right. And Andrew, who's your next speaker in the series?
The next speaker is
it Ove Ronstrom?
He's the last speaker,
okay.
So he'll be joining us. Chris Collins, I think, will be the next one, the rector of the the Faroe Islands University.
Excellent.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for your attendance. And we'll let Laurie go off and finish her breakfast. So thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thanks very much.